Hey, you're keeping company with Connor, and you're listening to another Town Square Spotlight. I got a great guest for us today. You can hear his voice in recent projects like DC's hit video game Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League and Marvel Animation's latest smash hit, X-Men 97. With us today, we have renowned voice actor JP Karliak. JP, how you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. As I was saying before we got onto the mic, I'm a big fan. I love all these projects that you're a part of, and it is really an honor to be speaking with you today. This is so cool. The first thing I really want to talk about, of course, X-Men 97. I was a big fan of the original series. I'm a big fan of this now. It's so cool to be able to talk to you about this show that so many people are loving. What is it, like 98% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes? People and fans can't get enough of this. How do you feel to be in a project like this and taking over the character of Morph from other voice actor Ron Rubin? What's that like to now step into these shoes?
You know, I've done a lot of legacy voice characters in my career, and there's always a degree of pressure that comes with it, fan expectations, and of varying degrees. And there's also the expectations of the producer, whether you're going to do an exact sound alike or you can put a little bit of yourself into it. You know, they dictate a lot of what the gimme room is. So there's a lot of factors that go into it that are under consideration. But I will say, it's been absolutely great. It's been so much fun. Morph was a character that when I auditioned for it, because Morph wasn't in a whole lot of the original series, I did have a little bit of leeway as to what I could do with it. They wanted the laugh to be consistent. But other than that, I had room to play. So for me, it was so much about just grounding him. I didn't feel the need to slap on a character voice for Morph because I felt he's a shapeshifter. There's he's changing into all these sorts of people. There's so much going on in his world and the X-Men universe at large. I'm like, I think I could just ground him in my own voice and just sort of be a dry wit, and that's enough.
Honestly, I love the vibes that you're bringing to Morph. The one particular instance when Morph is just kind of ribbing Gambit there when it came to Magneto and Rogue in the training simulator. I just love that scene. I love that scene. It's such a quick scene, but I just thought it was hilarious, and I love that dry wit, as you said. And another something special about this character, actually a couple of things. Morph is technically the first non-binary lead character in an animated superhero series, which, makes sense. Morph is a shapeshifter, can identify as just about anyone. But also, Morph's backstory is all about overcoming PTSD and manipulation in the form of Mr. Sinister. Episode 3 in particular really showed that, where having to confront Mr. Sinister again, and you could tell those scars were still there. Some Saturday morning cartoons will be like, oh, I was brainwashed, but I'm good now. But this show doesn't stray away from that. So what is that like to be taking on a character with so much weight and depth now?
I mean, I think the original series did such a great job of establishing that Morph not only went through a lot of trauma, but is having a lot of difficulty overcoming it. In the original series, he came back, but then just froze up when the Sentinels attacked because he, as you said, he was having PTSD. He's rejoined the team again after getting himself together. Whether or not he's able to stay that way and just sort of push through it with humor, or whether it really gets into his bones and causes him to, make mistakes again, who knows? But I love the complexity of it. I love the complexity that they bring to so many of the characters. I mean, the X-Men are so brightly colored with fun costumes, and there's all sorts of weird stuff happening, but there really is so much real world issues and drama that we're tackling. I mean, in the infamous, at this point, episode 5,
yes.
Where there's a major attack. The showrunner mentioned that he was referencing the attack on 9/11 and also the Orlando Pulse attack. So there's really some startling reference points in this show, and I think they're being handled just so deftly and so beautifully.
Honestly, when I watched episode 5, I was not all right. I was just kind of sitting there. It's like, wow.
Nobody was.
Intense. Nobody was. It was one of those things where I really had to call up all my friends who I knew were watching. And it was like, oh my God, did you watch this episode yet? Can we just cry together or something, please? Because it was intense. But that analogy to 9/11 is like absolutely amazing. And also when you think about it, in the name, X-Men 97. This picks up in 97. In this world of, the X-Men universe, they don't have their 9/11 yet. This is that 9/11. So to be in that kind of state is really insane. And to see how things are playing out now in the last few episodes of this season. Plus, also, I heard it was renewed for seasons 2 and 3. Congratulations on that. But yeah, of course. So X-Men has always been a platform for telling mature stories, pushing the boundaries, and not straying away from anything, really. And it's been paving the way when it comes to how superhero stories can be told and how animated stories can be told. It can be told for everybody in a big lesson. So episode 7 is coming out this Wednesday. There are rumors that episode 8, which comes out next week, is even more brutal than episode 5. What can fans expect for the rest of this season? Of course, no spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers. That's the tricky part. I mean, I think, just a continuation of the glorious storytelling that is already happening. I mean, we've already seen in a preview Captain America's shield makes an appearance. So What does that mean? I think what we can certainly expect is the writers and the animators on this show love this show. I mean, so does the cast. But as far as the people who are crafting the story, the writers and animators love this show so much. So I think, as we've been doing, people can expect us to continue tapping into whether they are extremely well-known or lesser-known X-Men stories that we are adapting and weaving together in a beautiful tapestry. There's going to be a lot more of that. So
yeah, no, it's very interesting. As you said, it's like you guys you're working on the Inferno storyline, you're working on the Life Death storyline, you're working on the Extinction storyline, but changing up each one of them. And in some ways, in my opinion, I may be getting some heat for this, a little bit better than the comics. I think the way that the storytelling has been going is very succinct and very accessible to anybody who's really coming into the series, whether they watched the original in the 90s or they binged it, or if they're just watching this season and that's it. I think it's very accessible and very powerful for anybody who's watching it right now. With that being, so obviously we just got the few episodes left. You guys are renewed for 2 and 3. Does that kind of take a little pressure off of you, as you said, how entering this role, a legacy character, you have those weights, but now that, hey, the green light for 2 and 3, does that help ease up any?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest concern, partially because I've played so many legacy characters at this point, I've learned to kind of let go of. I obviously I want to pay homage to what was done before. I want to be respectful of the source material, but I also can't be hyper precious about it and afraid that I'm going to offend people. Of course, there are going to be, every single time you do a legacy character, there's somebody who's going to be like, I hate it, you know. So that's less my concern. I'm so glad that it does resonate with people. But I think what was my greater concern, as you mentioned earlier, Morph is the first non-binary lead superhero. I really wanted it to resonate with queer fans, especially queer youth, and just feel that they were seen, that they were heard, and that they had a positive representation shown on screen. That was my concern. I am relieved and am taking a lot of deep breaths that has happened. And we did a convention a few weeks ago where there were people coming up to me and just so effusive about what Morph has meant to them. So that's been awesome. That's really been my priority.
That's amazing. And honestly, I just think it's such a seamless thing. And that's exactly what it needs to be. Just normalized and accepted and just have that love and be like, yeah, Morph's here. Morph's part of the team. Morph is non-binary, but that's Morph. And Morph is part of the team and is an amazing character and just as much a part of the X-Men as anybody else. So I love that representation, and I love that for you, that you get to have these conversations with everybody. I really want to dive into your queer activism in a moment, but before we get into that, I want to talk about one of your other projects that you've been doing recently. Jumping from Marvel to DC, you voiced the Clown Prince himself, the Joker, in the hit video game Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. You're going from hit to hit recently. My gosh, and of course, 2 different teams. So what is that like to be portraying not just such a famed villain, but here you are going from one side to the other. You're playing a hero on one side, but you're playing one of the greatest villains on another side. What's that like for you to take on this role now?
I mean, I'm a big fan of playing villains. It's one of my favorite things. Or at the very least, somebody who is a bit of a mischief, and I think Morph certainly is that. I really love this version of the Joker. I think I was lucky enough that I got to play a version of the Joker that we've never seen before. That is an Elseworld Joker, so I really got to make him my own. And yeah, he's so super fun. He's a younger Joker who is coming into a world that used to have a Mark Hamill Joker before he died in this universe.
Yeah.
So I am sort of emulating what my character is feeling in that I'm walking into a world where I know there are massive shoes to fill. And he's trying to take notes from what this older, certainly more megalomaniac Joker had done before him. Yeah, so it's an interesting parallel. But I've had so much fun, and as a new version of the Joker, it's been fun to pull references from so many different previous portrayals that I've loved for years.
I'm sure. And of course, you mentioned Mark Hamill, definitely very well renowned. Besides Luke Skywalker, people know him very much from the Joker. So I got to ask, how much of this did you grow up on? Did you read these comics? Did you watch all these cartoons? Are these the kinds of roles that inspired you to go into voice acting in the first place?
Watch the shows? Yes, for sure. I was a massive fan of Batman the Animated Series, and I watched a ton of cartoons as a kid. I did not watch X-Men the Animated Series only because it was on weekday afternoons, and I would get home from school, and I would turn on the TV and I would see the credits end just as I would be sitting down to watch the next show. So I knew the theme song.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until the movies that I really got into the X-Men, and then just started deep diving into the lore and really getting into what they were all about. I think I'm more of a comic book person now than I ever was as a kid.
Gotcha.
I just didn't have friends that read them, so it never really came up. But if you really want to know the lore of all of these movies and TV shows and properties, you have to go back to the source. So it's been fun to do that now.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you were growing up, and since you said you're a big fan of the Batman animated series, did you kind of grow up as a kid and looking at the Joker as oh, I want to play him one day?
Oh, yeah. For sure. I've had my Joker laugh for years. And
beautiful.
I posted on my Instagram as we were leading up to the release of it, my Halloween costume, what was this, 1988. So my Halloween costume in 1988 as the Joker, my Halloween costume in 2003 as the Joker, my Halloween costume in 2010 as the Joker. So, it's been a long time coming.
This has been a long time coming, and that's awesome. I'm so glad that you're able to take on this role, something that has been with you practically your whole life. So that's awesome. I love it. Your laugh in particular, haunting, chilling, absolutely beautiful. Keep it up. I can tell that you practiced it. Again, you're listening to a Town Square Spotlight. We're speaking with renowned voice actor JP Karliak, talking about X-Men 97, talking about Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. And now I really want to touch on something that means a lot to you, your LGBTQIA activism. And there's a number of things. You've already said before with Morph, the first non-binary lead superhero. That's big. But then, of course, this is not the first time that you have gone out and been on your platform. You have a number of really great things. For instance, Donna Madonna, an autobiographical one-act project, and also Queer Vox Academy, where I hear that you're bolstering and teaching queer voice actors. Can you talk to us about both those projects and what that means for you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, Donna Madonna was one act I wrote as not only a queer kid, but also an adopted queer kid. And it was a love letter to both my adopted mom and my birth mother, who are very amazing, but both very different women. So Donna Reed meets Madonna, Donna Madonna. And I wrote that in 2010 and toured with it around the country. I did New York Fringe, San Francisco Fringe, a bunch of different things.
Wow.
And that was great. And was in some ways, the beginning, I would say the beginning of really putting my queer self out there as part of my career. And then Queer Vox came out of pandemic, really. In 2021, I was talking to friends who are casting directors, And we were simultaneously celebrating the rise of queer characters in video games and animation, but also bemoaning the lack of authentic casting of those characters. They were usually played by cis or straight voice actors. And the common refrain was usually, well, I don't know where to find them. And I'm like, well, it's not like they don't exist. They're around, you know. So I started a class, which eventually developed into an online community, and now the organization that it is today, with a very robust online talent directory with nearly 1,000 voice actors on it, used by casting offices across the country. We also still offer classes in a variety of different areas. And we also do a lot of industry-focused training for studios and casting and agents and all sorts of people to really stress why this authentic casting is important, and talking about how it has less to do with, you know, who can play what. You know, we've all seen Stanley Tucci. We know he can play a gay guy, like, you know, and we found it very beautiful and affecting. It's less about the talent discussion, and it's more about we need to be offering job opportunities for people, for queer people, to earn wealth telling their own stories. You know, it's really about the business. It's really about equal opportunity employment. So that's what our mission is, and we've been going strong for a few years now, and yeah, it's been great.
No, that's really terrific. And I got to ask with that, since you've embraced the activism in with your professional career, how would you say that has changed the trajectory of things? Because if you're saying that you didn't really kind of adapt that into your professional career until about 2010, what was that like to embrace all these sides now and have these discussions and have these projects with all these people?
Honestly, I think in a lot of ways, as I've come to understand my queerness better, you know, I knew I was gay since I was a child, but like, you know, but I really didn't start identifying as genderqueer until, you know, my late 30s, as I really came to understand what that term meant. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, that's me. You know, but as I've known myself better, more doors for my career have opened up. And I'm not going to say that it's necessarily just because of like oh, you're that label, we need somebody who's that label, let me pull you in for this label. You know, yeah. It's really had more to do with that as an actor, the more awareness and confidence you have in your own body, the better you are at inhabiting others. So, yeah, so it's really just been a period of growth for me as I've been doing more of this. And I don't feel, I will not acknowledge I'm privileged in the sense that I do have the ability to shift my voice into, you know, quote unquote straight passing or whatever. You know, I was Boss Baby. I played Alec Baldwin. So like, you know,
yes.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate in that regard that I have that flexibility, but it has also been beautiful to be that I can bounce between being entrusted to play these ostensibly straight or cis or mask characters while also being able to play authentically queer characters as well.
Coming into yourself, coming into form like that and finding that confidence. And I'm so happy to hear that for yourself. And I think it's a great inspiration to a lot of people who are trying to find themselves as well, whether it's in the industry or just day-to-day life, whether it's just somebody in school right now trying to figure out who the heck they are, but they hear your voice on X-Men 97 or one of their favorite video games or one of these things, and they're like, wow, he's doing it. I can find myself too. So that's really, really awesome. Talking about finding one's voice, this is also an election year. And another thing that you find very important to yourself is Nerds Vote. Can you talk to us about Nerds Vote?
Yeah, Nerds Vote was the brainchild of my friend and fellow voice actor, Courtney Taylor, who you might know from Fallout and Mass Effect.
Yes.
And Courtney had the idea to bring voter registration opportunities to conventions. And then we started doing that, and then the pandemic hit, and we pivoted to more online digital outreach. So now Nerds Vote is a lot of things. We utilize our army of quote-unquote notable nerds, the voice actors and fellow actors with the fan base, to get them to engage their fans with the importance of voting, all in a nonpartisan way, that it's not about, we're not getting into specific candidates or issues, even though we ourselves as humans are very opinionated on that. It's really more about just getting involved in your democracy, because truly, we feel that the death of our democracy isn't going to be one opinion or the other. It's going to be the apathy of having an opinion and the lack of awareness. Yeah, right now we're actually gearing up for Free Comic Book Day. We're partnering with 50 comic book stores across the country. We're sending out all of our Nerds Vote swag to give out to all of their customers that'll have QR codes where they can just snap them and register to vote. And just a little carrot on top of that wonderful holiday of Free Comic Book Day.
That's amazing. And I got to say, Free Comic Book Day was like one of my favorite holidays each year. We had a book fair at school for Free Comic Book Day, and I would just go crazy. So I know it inspired me a lot. I know it inspired a lot of my friends, and that's just a really awesome way to be able to get the word out there about something that is so powerful and so needed right now. So honestly, thank you for your work. Thank you for your time, of course. You can check out JP on X-Men 97. You can check that streaming on Disney+. You can check out Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. You can buy that video game for yourself. And of course, support. You can check out all the other links when it comes to Queer Vox Academy and Nerds Vote. You can find more of that online in the description of this interview on the Town Square Media website. JP, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I greatly appreciate it. Do you have any last little nugget for anybody listening?
Well, since we ended on what we ended on, go out and vote.
Go out and vote. Absolutely. I agree. Thanks so much, JP.
Thank you.